Now, the first time I heard of the very bizarre and shocking incident in Istanbul, Turkey, what hit me immediately was the name. The name was very familiar. Indeed, it is a name which is very familiar to any Kenyan who was a grown-up, alive, and knowing what's happening in Kenya in the 80s. I'm of course talking about Adnan Khashoggi, once reputed to be the richest man on earth. Now, Adnan Khashoggi is actually an uncle to the late Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist who was so dramatically assassinated in Turkey, Istanbul. But let me dive into that in part 2 of this video. Now, the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, who was about 59 years old, right inside the Saudi Arabian consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, has shocked the world. The whole story of his fiancée, Hatice Cengiz, waiting outside in vain for him to come out of the consulate, and the love of her life not coming out at all, and then later learning that he has been murdered, and certain body parts have been sent to the person who ordered the hit, is just sickening. It's crazy. It is the kind of thing straight out of a horror movie most of us would not like to watch. But it happened. It actually happened. Gosh. Actually, I cannot remember the last time that we had a news item, that hit the headlines right across the world, from the remotest part of the planet to the Western world, to CNN, to the leading news organizations in the world. I just can't remember the last item. But this one has done exactly that. Now, obviously, if you're a government and you carry out an assassination, governments around the world do this regularly, this is the last thing you want to happen, because it backfires so badly on you and your government that actually you should not have gone ahead and done it in the first place. You just get yourself into a hole which might be impossible to get out of, which is exactly where the government of Saudi Arabia now finds itself in. Now, I'm aware of the fact that I might sound very cold, when I discuss this issue in the manner I'm about to discuss it in, but please bear with me, because I think we need to understand this, in order to get a proper perspective of exactly what has gone down here and the possible repercussions and consequences going forward. Now, with most assassinations, you need something called plausible deniability. Now, that is completely missing in this case. The man was killed right inside the Saudi consulate. CCTV cameras captured him going in. But he was not captured coming out. In fact, somebody else wore his clothes, and came out trying to pretend that it's him. Then there's the issue of the hard drive, the hard drive to the CCTV cameras inside the consulate. Somebody removed them just hours before the murder. Then you have very accurate information leaking out very early. Within hours of this happening, the story had already come out that he was dead, he had been murdered, and that he had been dismembered. Pieces of his body had been carried out of the country. Oh boy, gosh. This is just unimaginable. It is just unimaginable, and yet it happened. The long and short of what I'm trying to say is that everything is such that all fingers point only in one direction: the Saudi authorities. Indeed, Jamal Khashoggi had in fact already fled from his home country. He's a Saudi national. Why? Because he feared for his life. And that's not all. The Saudi prince, and many other high-ranking officials of the Saudi government had tried to convince Jamal Khashoggi to return home. And he had refused. And he had told very many people the reason why he did not want to go back to his homeland is that he feared he would be assassinated. The whole thing is so obvious, that no wonder Western countries, very many of them, are already talking about sanctions against Saudi Arabia. Nations are already very seriously discussing how they're going to react against this horrible, gory murder of a nation where they've murdered their own citizen. And the man left with blood dripping from his hands is no doubt the man you see on your screen right now, Crown Prince, 33 years old, the de facto leader of Saudi Arabia, and the person who received the sickening package of the hands, rather the fingers, of the slain journalist, according to various sources. Now, the question on the minds of many is, what were these people thinking? In planning and executing this, what were they thinking? Yes, it was planned. It was not a spur of the moment thing. In fact, it all went so terribly wrong that the Saudi officials had to change their story several times. From they have no idea where the guy is because he walked out of the consulate alive, that didn't fly. So the story changed to a fight broke out inside the consulate and then he was killed during the fight. That was a funny one. To the latest version that somebody acted on their own and committed this crime, and action has been taken against that person and those responsible. That one, I can also tell you for free, is not flying either. And I suspect the story will have to be changed again. The official version of what exactly happened. Now, unfortunately, governments have been known to assassinate their own people within the borders of their own countries. However, in this case, although the late Jamal Khashoggi was actually murdered inside the consulate, the Saudi consulate, which technically speaking is within Saudi Arabia, there are a lot of other legal issues that crop up, especially in relation to body parts being transported outside the consulate, which is now Turkey, and all manner of other legal issues to do with the aftermath of this horrible crime which had to take place within Turkish soil. Bottom line, I do not see how the Saudi officials, the Saudi government, can wiggle out of this one without extensive long-term damage in diplomatic circles and well beyond. What that means is that there are going to be serious political consequences right inside Saudi Arabia. And even that will not be enough to make this go away. And so, there will also be very, very serious political consequences outside Saudi Arabia, which will hit the Saudi government very, very seriously. Now, the very, very tricky part here, in my view, is that this thing involves the public, an outraged public in various nations. You see, governments can sit down and sort out even the worst mess you can think of, as long as it's between governments. And as long as there's very minimal information going out into the public. However, the gigantic nightmare here is that everything here is in the public domain. Let me give you an example. For instance, the American government could decide, because of their various political strategic reasons, that they'll quieten this thing down. Find a way to rescue their key allies in the Middle East. Yep, they could easily decide to do that. However, the big question is, will the American public allow them to do something like that? You see, the public are not looking at this politically or strategically. They're just looking at it like human beings. It is a crime, a very bloody crime at that. And somebody has to pay for it, and has to pay for it big time. Now, if that is what will go down in the US, in America, what will go down in the other smaller nations involved? For instance, in Turkey. And even before you're done thinking about Turkey, let's mention all the other countries, nations of the world, and their diplomatic relationship with Saudi Arabia. Folks, it is not going to be business as usual. No way. And that is why, in my view, this is not just a murder. It's an international crisis of a magnitude, a magnitude so huge that I find it difficult to think of any other crisis in recent times of this magnitude. I don't want to sound alarmist, not at all. But I just want to remind those who read history that the First World War, the trigger for the First World War, was an assassination. And I'm not saying the unfortunate assassination of Jamal Khashoggi will cause a world war. No way, I'm not saying that. But my point is, even small, seemingly small incidences, involving assassination, the spilling of blood, can have very far-reaching consequences and repercussions. And already, the way this Jamal Khashoggi issue is shaping up, it is going to be exactly that. The fact that this story is hitting the headlines all over the world means that the consequences, the repercussions, must hit all over the world. Even if it is indirectly, even if it is in a small way, very small way, in some far-out countries. Some planned small assassination on foreign soil somewhere is going to be reviewed, maybe even shelved altogether. Well, let us just wait and see what unfolds. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.